I spent 5 years in prison for a crime I did not commit. When I got out, I built a $35 million empire from nothing. I trusted my wife. I trusted my best friend. I trusted my son. And for 40 years, all three of them were laughing behind my back. My wife poisoned my water. My best friend fathered my child. And my daughter-in-law was planted in my family, like a spy. They toasted my death on camera, so I destroyed them all on live television. Thank you for being here with me today. Before we begin, drop a comment and tell me where you are watching from. And let me ask you something. Have you ever poured your entire life into someone, only to discover that they were stealing from you the whole time? What you are about to hear is the story of how I lost everything I thought was real, and how I burned it all down to find the truth. Also, a quick note. Parts of this story include fictional details added for storytelling and reflection. Any similarity to real people or events is purely coincidental, but the message behind it is very real. It was a Tuesday morning in Memphis, Tennessee. Early October. The kind of morning where the air has just enough bite to remind you that summer is gone and something colder is coming. I was sitting in my kitchen, the big one with the marble island, and the custom cabinetry that Lorraine had insisted on 3 years ago. Cost me $40,000 to renovate that kitchen. She said she wanted it to feel like home. Funny how a place can feel like a coffin when you know what is hiding inside the walls. Lorraine was standing at the counter. My wife of 40 years. She was wearing her church clothes even though it was a Tuesday. A cream-colored blouse buttoned to the neck and a long skirt that brushed her ankles. She was humming. She was always humming. Gospel tunes, hymns, spirituals. That morning it was His eye is on the sparrow. Her voice was sweet. It floated through the kitchen like incense. She looked holy. She looked like the kind of woman you would trust with your life. I was trusting her with my life. Every single morning. She walked to the water filtration system on the far counter. It was a big stainless steel unit, the kind you see in health food stores. Lorraine had bought it 2 years ago. She said tap water was full of chemicals. She said she wanted to make sure I was drinking the purest water possible. She said it was love. She filled my glass. The water was clear. It looked clean. It tasted like nothing. She set it in front of me with a smile. That smile used to make me feel like the richest man in the world. Now I know it was the smile of a woman counting down the days until my funeral. Drink up, honey, she said softly. You know what the doctor said about staying hydrated. Your kidneys need the support. I picked up the glass. I took a long sip. The water was cool against my throat. I had been feeling tired lately. Bone tired. The kind of exhaustion that sits in your marrow and refuses to leave. My hands had started trembling 2 weeks ago. Not much. Just a slight vibration. Like a motor running too hot. I chalked it up to age. I was 69 years old. I had spent 40 years pouring concrete and managing construction crews and negotiating contracts. My body had earned the right to be tired. But my body was not tired. My body was being poisoned. I did not know that yet. Not on that Tuesday morning. On that morning, I was just a man drinking water in his kitchen, watching his wife hum a hymn about God's protection while she slowly killed him. The irony would be funny if it were not so evil. The doorbell rang at exactly 8:15. Lorraine frowned. She did not like unexpected visitors. She liked control. She liked knowing who was coming and when and why. I stood up slowly. My joints protested. My knees cracked like rifle shots in the quiet kitchen. I will get it, I said. I walked to the front door. Through the frosted glass, I could see a familiar silhouette. Short, compact, professional posture. It was Patricia, my private nurse. She had been coming 3 times a week for the past 4 months, ever since my doctor said my blood pressure needed monitoring. Patricia was a good woman, 52 years old. No nonsense. She had served as a military nurse for 20 years before going private. She did not scare easily. But when I opened that door, Patricia looked scared. "Good morning, Mr. Mitchell," she said. Her voice was tight, controlled, but her eyes were moving fast, scanning the hallway behind me. Is Mrs. Mitchell home? She is in the kitchen, I said. Why? Patricia stepped inside. She was holding a manila envelope against her chest like a shield. She lowered her voice to a whisper. I need to speak with you privately, sir. Right now. It cannot wait. Something in her tone made the hair on my arms stand up. I had not felt that sensation in decades. The last time I felt it was 40 years ago, standing in a courtroom, watching my best friend lie under oath. It was the feeling of the ground shifting beneath your feet. The feeling of a trapdoor opening. I led Patricia to my study at the end of the hall. I closed the door. I locked it. The room smelled of leather and old wood. My degrees were on the wall. My awards. Photos of buildings I had constructed. A lifetime of proof that I was somebody. That I had built something real. Patricia sat down across from my desk. She placed the manila envelope on the surface between us. Her hands were steady, but I could see the tension in her jaw. She was clenching her teeth. Mr. Mitchell, she began. Last week, during your routine blood draw, I noticed some irregularities in your panel. Your liver enzymes were elevated. Your kidney function was declining faster than it should for a man your age. I ordered additional testing. Specific toxicology screening. She paused. She looked at me with eyes that held something I could not identify. Pity, fear, anger, all three. The results came back this morning, she said. She opened the envelope and slid a single sheet of paper across the desk. I looked down at it. Numbers, charts, medical terminology. But one line was highlighted in yellow. One line that changed everything. Arsenic. Chronic low-dose exposure. Levels consistent with deliberate administration over a period of approximately 6 to 8 weeks. I stared at the paper. The words blurred. Then they sharpened. Then they burned themselves into my brain like a brand on cattle hide. Someone is poisoning you, Mr. Mitchell, Patricia said. Her voice cracked on the last word. Deliberately. Consistently. If this continues at the current rate, you will experience complete renal failure within 2 to 3 weeks, followed by cardiac arrest. I looked up at her. My mouth was dry. The glass of water I had just drunk was sitting in my stomach like a stone. I tested the water filtration system in your kitchen, Patricia continued. She pulled a second document from the envelope. The filter cartridge has been modified, sir. Someone installed a slow-release capsule inside the carbon chamber. It dissolves arsenic into every glass of water that passes through it. The concentration is precise, calculated. This is not an accident, Mr. Mitchell. This is engineering. I looked at the paper. I looked at the door. Behind that door, down the hallway, in the kitchen I had built for her. My wife was humming about how God watches over the sparrow, and she was filling my glass with death. I sat there staring at that lab report until the numbers stopped making sense. My eyes were open, but I was not seeing the paper anymore. I was seeing something else. A courtroom. Wood paneling. Fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. The smell of floor polish and sweat. I was 29 years old again, standing in a suit that did not fit because I had lost 15 pounds in county jail waiting for trial. And across the room, sitting in the witness chair with his hand on the Bible, was the man I called my brother. Franklin. Bishop Franklin now. But back then he was just Franklin. Tall, handsome, smooth as river stone. We had grown up together on the south side of Memphis. Same block, same church, same dreams. We both started working at Gentry Construction right out of high school. I was the one with the head for numbers. Franklin was the one with the mouth. He could talk a dog off a meat truck. He could sell sand in the desert. We were going to build something together. That was the plan. But Franklin had a different plan. One that did not include me breathing free air. The charges were embezzlement. $43,000 missing from the Gentry accounts. The prosecution said I had been skimming for months. They had documents. They had ledgers. They had a paper trail that led straight to my desk. What they did not have was the truth. Because the truth was sitting in the witness chair, wearing a borrowed tie and a face full of rehearsed grief. I will never forget what Franklin said on that stand. He looked at the jury and he said, "It breaks my heart to be here. Harold is my brother, but I cannot lie to God. I saw the transfers. I confronted him. He begged me not to tell. He said he needed the money for his family. I wanted to help him. I wanted to cover for him, but my conscience would not let me. Every word was a lie. Every syllable was a nail in my coffin." The jury deliberated for 4 hours. They came back with a guilty verdict. The judge gave me 7 years. I served 5. 5 years. 1,826 days. I counted every single one. I scratched them into the concrete wall beside my bunk with a piece of broken wire. I watched the seasons change through a window the size of a shoebox. I missed my wife. I missed the smell of fresh lumber. I missed the sound of my own name spoken without the word inmate in front of it. But here is what I did not miss. Here is what I did not know. While I was lying on that thin mattress staring at the ceiling, Franklin was lying in my bed, in my house, with my wife. He came to comfort her. That is what Lorraine told me later. She said he checked on her. She said he brought groceries. She said he prayed with her. And I believed it, because I had no reason not to. I was behind bars. She was alone. And Franklin was my brother. When I walked out of those prison gates on a Thursday morning in April, the sun was so bright it hurt my eyes. I had forgotten what unfiltered daylight looked like. I squinted against the glare, and there she was, Lorraine, standing by a rusty Buick in the parking lot. She was wearing a yellow dress. She was holding a child, a boy, chubby cheeks, big brown eyes. He was clinging to her neck, staring at me like I was a stranger. And I was. "This is Darnell," Lorraine said. Her voice was shaking. She was crying. "Your son, Harold. He was conceived on your last conjugal visit. He is 2 years old. He has been waiting to meet his daddy." I took that boy in my arms. He smelled like baby powder and something sweet. He looked up at me and he did not cry. He just stared. And I wept. I stood there in that parking lot, a free man holding what I thought was my legacy, and I cried so hard my chest hurt. I never questioned it. The math was close enough. Conjugal visits were not well documented. Lorraine said the dates lined up, and I believed her because I needed to believe her. I had just lost 5 years of my life. I could not afford to lose my son, too. So I accepted the miracle. I held that boy, and I thanked God for giving me something beautiful in the middle of all that ugliness. That gratitude cost me 40 years of truth. I came home with nothing. No money. No reputation. No prospects. Every construction company in Memphis had seen the headlines. Nobody wanted to hire a convicted embezzler. I applied to 47 jobs in the first 3 months. Every single one said no. Some said it to my face. Some just never called back. The result was the same. I was a ghost. A man with a number instead of a name. But I was not built to break. My father loaded trucks for 40 years and never missed a day. My mother cleaned houses until her knees gave out. They taught me that dignity is not something the world gives you. It is something you build with your own hands every single morning. So I built. I started with a wheelbarrow and a shovel. I dug foundations for cash. I poured driveways on weekends. I undercut every bid in town because I had no overhead and no pride left to protect. I worked 16-hour days. I ate rice and beans. I put every spare dollar into equipment. 1 mixer, 1 dump truck, 1 small crew of men who did not care about my record because they had records of their own. Mitchell Construction was born in the mud. It grew in the sweat. By the time Darnell was 10 years old, I had 30 employees and a reputation for building things that lasted. By the time he was 20, I had 200 employees and contracts across 3 states. By the time he was 30, I was worth $35 million, and I had built half the commercial buildings in the Memphis metropolitan area. And through all of it, Lorraine was there. She was the dutiful wife. She joined the church auxiliary. She hosted dinner parties for my business partners. She volunteered at the school. She was everything a man could want. Patient, faithful, godly, or so I thought. And through all of it, Franklin was there too. He had left construction and gone into ministry. He said God called him. He became pastor of Greater Faith Baptist, then bishop. He built a megachurch with 5,000 members. He drove a Cadillac Escalade. He wore custom suits. And every Sunday, he sat in my living room after service, ate my food, drank my wine, and called me brother. I paid for the church renovation. I paid for the new fellowship hall. I paid for the steeple. I donated over $2 million across 30 years. Because Franklin was my brother. Because he was the man who comforted my wife while I was away. Because he baptized my son, the boy with Franklin's forehead, the boy with Franklin's jawline, the boy I never looked at closely enough because love makes you blind and gratitude makes you stupid. I sat in my study, 40 years later, holding a lab report that told me my wife was killing me. And I thought about that parking lot. I thought about that yellow dress. I thought about the lie she placed in my arms and called a miracle. The memories did not make me sad. They made me cold. A cold that started in my chest and spread outward until my fingers felt like stone. I was not going to confront her. I was not going to scream. I was not going to give her the satisfaction of watching me crumble. The last time I trusted the system, I lost 5 years. This time, I would trust no one but myself. I did not sleep that night. I lay in bed next to the woman who was killing me, and I did not close my eyes. Lorraine slept peacefully. Her breathing was slow and even. She was on her side, facing away from me, her silk bonnet smooth against the pillow. She looked serene. She smelled like cocoa butter and lavender, the scent of a woman at peace with herself. I watched the ceiling fan spin in the dark, round and round, slow and steady, like the poison moving through my bloodstream. By 4 a.m, I had a plan. I called Patricia on a burner phone I had purchased from a gas station the night before. Paid cash. No receipt. No trail. 30 years in construction teaches you that paper trails are either your best friend or your worst enemy. I need a clean water filter cartridge, I said. Same brand. Same model. Identical to the one in my kitchen. Before Lorraine wakes up. At 5:45, while Lorraine was still sleeping, I crept downstairs. The hardwood floor was cold under my bare feet. I opened the filtration unit. The cartridge looked normal, but now that I knew what to look for, I could see the slight discoloration at the base where the capsule had been inserted. Almost invisible. Almost professional. Almost perfect. I removed it. Sealed it in a freezer bag. Evidence. Patricia arrived at 6 with the replacement. I installed it in under 2 minutes. Lorraine would never know the difference. She would fill my glass. The water would be clean, and I would drink it in front of her every morning, letting her believe the poison was still working. The performance had begun. That afternoon, I drove to a nondescript office on Union Avenue. 3rd floor, Suite 312. Webb and Associates. Private Investigations. Marcus Webb was a former Memphis police detective. 22 years on the force. Thorough. Discreet. And most importantly, no connection to me that Lorraine or Franklin could trace. He listened without interrupting as I laid out the situation. When I finished, he leaned forward. "Why not go to the police?" he asked. I looked at him. 40 years ago, I went to the police, I said. I told them I was innocent. I spent 5 years in a cell because a man lied better than I told the truth. The system failed me once. I will not give it the chance to fail me again. Not until I have evidence that no lawyer on earth can twist. Marcus nodded. "What do you need?" "Everything," I said. "Surveillance on my wife, cameras inside my house, kitchen, living room, hallway. I want to see everything that happens when she thinks I am asleep or away. And I need results within 5 days. She thinks I am deteriorating. If I take too long, she will escalate. Wednesday came. Lorraine left for her weekly prayer meeting at Greater Faith Baptist at 10 in the morning. She kissed my forehead on the way out. Her lips were dry and cold. She told me to rest. She told me to drink my water. She told me she loved me. The words tasted like rust in my mouth. The moment her car pulled out of the driveway, Marcus and his technician were at the back door. They worked fast. Cameras the size of shirt buttons installed in the kitchen light fixture, the living room smoke detector, the hallway thermostat, wireless feed, encrypted, streaming to a secure server only Marcus and I could access. By the time Lorraine came home at 1:15, the house looked exactly the same. But it was no longer her stage. It was mine. That night, I watched the recordings from my study. The kitchen feed was crystal clear. Lorraine came home, took off her shoes, poured herself wine. Then she walked to the filtration unit. She opened the housing and pulled out my clean cartridge. She examined it, frowned, turned it over. Then she reached into her purse and pulled out a small plastic bag containing a white capsule. She inserted it into the carbon chamber with practiced fingers. Click. Snap. Done. She closed the housing, washed her hands, and the entire time, she was humming. His eye is on the sparrow. The same hymn, the same sweet voice, singing about God's protection while she reloaded the weapon that was killing me. I watched her finish. I watched her dry her hands on the dish towel. I watched her pick up her wine and walk away. Something cracked inside me. Not my heart, my patience, but I held it together. The camera had captured everything. Date stamped, time stamped, undeniable. My phone buzzed. Marcus, Mr. Mitchell, he said, I followed your wife today. She did not go to the prayer room at Greater Faith. She went to the bishop's private residence behind the church. She was inside for 3 hours. I have photographs of her entering and exiting. She was not carrying a Bible. 3 hours. Every Wednesday. How long has this been going on? I asked. Based on the church secretary's parking lot records, he said, every Wednesday for at least 4 years. Same time, same duration, same location. I hung up. I sat in the dark. Lorraine was asleep upstairs, dreaming of whatever murderers dream of. And somewhere across town, Bishop Franklin was sleeping in a bed that my wife had warmed for him. The man who put me in prison. The man who stole my life. Still stealing, but not for much longer. Thursday morning I drove to Greater Faith Baptist Church. The building sat on a hill on the east side of Memphis, white brick and tall windows gleaming in the autumn sun. I had paid for those windows. Stained glass imported from a workshop in Virginia. 12 panels depicting the life of Christ. Each one cost $8,000. I wrote the check without blinking because Franklin said the congregation needed beauty. He said beauty brought people closer to God. I parked in the visitor lot and sat for a moment, gripping the steering wheel. My hands were steady. That surprised me. I expected trembling. I expected rage. But what I felt was something colder. Calculation. The same feeling I got before walking into a contract negotiation where the other side did not know I had already read their bottom line. I grabbed my cane from the passenger seat. I did not need the cane. My legs were strong, but the cane was part of the costume. The dying old man. The fading patriarch. The target who did not know he was a target. I leaned on it heavily as I walked through the side entrance. The church smelled of floor wax and fresh flowers. The hallway to the administrative wing was lined with photographs. Church picnics. Baptisms. Groundbreaking ceremonies. I stopped in front of one. It was from the Fellowship Hall dedication 12 years ago. Franklin was in the center, smiling wide, holding a golden shovel. I was beside him, my arm around his shoulder. Brothers. I looked at his face in the photograph. I looked at his forehead. Wide. Flat across the top. I looked at his jawline. Square, prominent. I looked at his ears. Set low on his head, slightly forward. Then I looked at the photograph next to it. Darnell's wedding. 3 years ago. My son standing in his tuxedo, grinning at the camera. Same forehead. Same jawline. Same ears. The resemblance hit me like a fist to the sternum. It had always been there. 32 years of evidence hanging on a wall in plain sight, and I had never seen it because I was not looking. Because love told me not to look. I kept walking. Franklin's office was at the end of the hall. The door was heavy oak with a brass nameplate. Bishop Franklin D. Jenkins, Senior Pastor. I knocked. "Come in," his voice boomed. Rich. Commanding. The voice of a man who was used to being obeyed. I opened the door. Franklin was behind his desk, surrounded by books and papers. He was wearing a charcoal gray suit with a lavender pocket square. His reading glasses were perched on his nose. He looked up and his face split into a wide smile. "Harold." He stood up immediately, coming around the desk with his arms open. "Brother, it is good to see you. Lorraine told me you have been feeling poorly. We have been praying for you." I let him hug me. His cologne was heavy, sandalwood and something sweet. I forced myself not to stiffen. I forced myself to lean into the embrace like a weak man leaning on a strong friend. "I am not doing well, Franklin," I said. My voice cracked. It was not acting. The emotion was real, but the cause was different from what he assumed. "I need counsel. Spiritual guidance. I feel like my time is coming." Franklin guided me to the leather chair across from his desk. He poured me a glass of water from a crystal pitcher on his credenza. I took it. I drank half. And when he turned to grab his Bible from the shelf, I poured the other half back into the glass and slipped it into the plastic bag inside my jacket pocket. His saliva was on the rim. His DNA. We talked for an hour. He quoted scripture. He prayed over me. He held my hand and asked God to grant me strength and peace. And the entire time, I studied his face. I memorized every line, every angle, every feature that I would later compare to the face of the boy I called my son. When I left, Franklin walked me to my truck. He put his hand on my shoulder. That heavy, possessive hand. "Take care of yourself, Harold," he said. "You are a blessing to this community. We need you around." I nodded. I climbed into my truck. I drove home. And the moment I walked into my study, I pulled up 2 photographs on my computer. One was Franklin at age 30. I had found it in an old church directory. The other was Darnell at age 30, his wedding portrait. I put them side by side on the screen. The same forehead, the same jaw, the same nose, the same slight dimple on the left cheek. It was not a resemblance. It was a carbon copy. A photocopy of betrayal printed on human skin. I sat back in my chair. I did the math one more time. The math I should have done 32 years ago. I was arrested in January. I was sentenced in March. I entered prison in April. Darnell was born the following January. 9 months after Franklin's testimony sent me away. It was not a coincidence. It was not a moment of weakness between a lonely woman and a comforting friend. It was architecture. Franklin did not just happen to sleep with my wife while I was gone. He engineered my absence. He manufactured the embezzlement charges. He destroyed my alibi. He testified against me under oath. He put me in a cage for 5 years because he wanted Lorraine. And it worked. He got the woman. He got the child. He got 30 years of my money flowing into his church. He got Sunday dinners at my table. He got to watch me raise his son and call him brother while he laughed behind my back. The embezzlement was never about money. It was about removing me from the equation so he could take everything that was mine. My wife, my future, my blood. I closed the laptop. The screen went dark. My reflection stared back at me. An old man with tired eyes and a jaw set like concrete. He did not just steal my wife, he planned it. He manufactured a crime, destroyed my alibi, and put me in a cage. Also, he could have her. Darnell was not an accident of passion. He was the product of premeditation. And I had spent 40 years paying for the privilege of raising another man's son. The cold in my chest spread deeper. It reached the place where forgiveness lives and froze it solid. Oil and water. That is what everyone said about Lorraine and Vanessa. One was old school church, modest dresses, hymns before breakfast. The other was 28 years old, glued to her phone, posting selfies in outfits that made the deacons' wives whisper behind their fans on Sunday morning. Lorraine criticized Vanessa's short skirts. Vanessa rolled her eyes at Lorraine's Bible study invitations. They barely tolerated each other at family dinners. Or so I thought. It was Friday when Marcus called with something that changed the shape of the entire investigation. I was in my study, reviewing the camera footage from the past 2 days, cataloging timestamps and building my evidence file. The phone buzzed, and I picked up immediately. "Mr. Mitchell," Marcus said. His voice had that tight edge it got when he had found something significant. "I ran a deep background on your daughter-in-law, Vanessa Renee Mitchell, born Vanessa Renee Jenkins." I sat up straight. "Jenkins." "Yes, sir," Marcus continued. "Her mother is Claudette Jenkins. Claudette is Bishop Franklin's younger sister. Vanessa is Franklin's niece." The room tilted. I gripped the edge of my desk. My daughter-in-law was Franklin's blood. She was planted in my family, placed next to my son like a surveillance camera with a pulse. "How did she meet Darnell?" I asked. My voice sounded far away. "Church social event," Marcus said. 3 years ago. Organized by Bishop Franklin himself. He introduced them personally. Multiple witnesses confirmed. He told people he had a feeling about them. Said God told him they were meant to be together. God did not tell him anything. Franklin told himself. He arranged the marriage. He placed his niece inside my house, inside my son's bed, inside my family, like a Trojan horse. She was never a wife. She was a handler, a spy reporting back to headquarters. "I need cameras in Darnell's house," I told Marcus. Tonight, it took Marcus less than 24 hours. Darnell and Vanessa lived in a townhouse I had purchased for them as a wedding gift. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, $500,000 of real estate that I now realized was just another outpost in Franklin's empire. The footage came in Saturday evening. I watched it in my study, with the door locked and the lights off. The blue glow of the monitor was the only illumination, casting shadows on the walls that looked like prison bars. The first clip was from Friday night. Vanessa was alone in the kitchen. Darnell was at the gym. She picked up her phone and dialed. The audio was clean. "Uncle Frank," she said. Her voice was different from the one she used around me. Warmer, conspiratorial, more confident. "He had another dizzy spell today. Lorraine says he is barely eating. His hands are shaking worse. I think we are close." A pause while Franklin spoke on the other end. Vanessa nodded. 2 more weeks? Okay. I will keep Darnell calm. He is getting nervous. He keeps asking questions about the will. I told him to shut up and wait. She hung up. She poured herself a glass of wine and smiled at her own reflection in the window. It was the smile of someone who had already spent money that was not hers. But the real footage came on Saturday afternoon. I watched it 3 times. Each viewing carved the images deeper into my memory like a chisel on granite. Lorraine arrived at the townhouse at 2 in the afternoon. She was carrying a bottle of champagne. Expensive. The kind I kept in my wine cellar for special occasions. She must have taken it from my house that morning while I was in the shower. Vanessa opened the door. They hugged. Not the stiff, obligatory hug they performed at family gatherings. This was warm, familiar, the embrace of co-conspirators. They sat in the living room. Lorraine popped the cork. She poured 2 glasses. They clinked the crystal together. The sound was small and sharp, like a bone breaking. "To the old fool finally giving up," Lorraine said. She took a long sip. Vanessa laughed. It was a harsh sound, nothing like the girlish giggle she performed for me and Darnell. "He built it all, and we will take it all. Uncle Frank says 2 more weeks at this dosage. His kidneys should start shutting down by then." The doctor will call it age-related renal failure. Nobody will question it. Lorraine set her glass down. Make it one, she said. Her voice was flat, cold. I am tired of pretending. I am tired of sleeping next to a man I have hated for 40 years. Every night I look at him and I see the fool who never figured it out. I want it over. They clinked glasses again. Vanessa leaned back on the sofa, rubbing her stomach. She was not pregnant, but she often complained about cramps to avoid family obligations. She picked up her phone and scrolled through something. Once he is gone, Vanessa said, the guardianship papers kick in. Darnell signs everything over to the family trust. Franklin's trust. The old man spent 40 years building an empire for the man who destroyed him. She looked up at Lorraine and smiled. Poetic, is it not? Lorraine smiled back. It was the cruelest expression I had ever seen on a human face. We have earned this, she said. 40 years of acting. 40 years of pretending to love a man who bored me to death. At least now the death part will be literal. They laughed together. They drank together. They celebrated my murder like it was a promotion. I stopped the recording. The screen froze on Lorraine's face. Mid-laugh, champagne glass raised. I stared at that face. The face I had kissed every morning for 40 years. The face that told me she loved me. The face that tucked my son into bed and read him Bible stories. It was not a face anymore. It was a mask. And behind it was something I did not have a name for, something beyond betrayal, beyond evil, something that smiled while it killed and sang hymns while it buried. I closed my laptop. My hands were shaking, not from fear, not from the arsenic that was no longer flowing through my veins, from rage, pure, undiluted, volcanic rage. But rage without a plan is just noise. And I was done making noise. I was building a bomb. Saturday evening. My study looked like a war room. The desk was covered with manila folders, photographs, printouts of bank records, USB drives labeled by date, a laptop streaming encrypted footage from 4 different cameras. The walls were closing in, not with claustrophobia, but with evidence. Every surface held a piece of the truth. Every folder contained a fragment of the lie I had been living. 40 years ago, I was convicted by lies. This time, the truth would be my weapon. I had spent the morning at Dr. Chen's private laboratory on the north side of the city. Henry Chen was a forensic pathologist with 30 years of experience and no connection to any church, any congregation, or any bishop in Memphis. I had found him through Marcus, cash payment, no insurance trail. I placed 2 items on his stainless steel counter. A plastic bag containing a water glass with dried saliva on the rim, Franklin's glass from his office, and a sealed envelope containing 3 hair follicles I had pulled from Darnell's hairbrush during a visit to his townhouse earlier that week. Paternity test, I said. Rush. Dr. Chen looked at the items. He looked at me. He did not ask questions. Men who work in forensics learn not to ask questions when a man walks in with that look in his eyes. 4 hours, he said. I waited in his sterile lobby, sitting on a plastic chair under fluorescent lights. It reminded me of the waiting room at the county courthouse 40 years ago. The same cold light, the same hard chair, the same feeling that the next word spoken would determine the shape of my remaining life. Dr. Chen came out at 3:17 in the afternoon. He was holding a single sheet of paper. His face was neutral, professional, but his eyes were soft with something that might have been sympathy. Probability of paternity, he read. 99.9%. Subject B is the biological father of Subject A. There it was. Scientific confirmation of what my eyes had already told me. Franklin was Darnell's father. The boy I raised. The boy I taught to pour concrete. The boy I sent to college. The boy whose wedding I paid for. He was never mine. He was Franklin's from the very first breath. I took the paper. I folded it carefully and placed it in my jacket. I did not cry. I had no tears left for this family. The well was dry. Dr. Chen also handed me a second report. the arsenic analysis from the contaminated filter cartridge Patricia had preserved. The concentration is extreme, he said. At this sustained dosage, complete renal failure would occur within 14 days, followed by cardiac arrest within 72 hours after that. Mr. Mitchell, whoever engineered this device intended for you to die within 3 weeks. This is not a slow poisoning. This is an accelerated execution. 17 days. That was all I had left if I had kept drinking that water. 17 days between me and a pine box. I thanked Dr. Chen. I paid him in cash. I drove to my next stop. Diane Kessler's office was on the 14th floor of the Commerce Tower downtown. She was the most expensive criminal defense attorney in Tennessee. $1,200 an hour. She wore sharp suits and sharper smiles. She had defended CEOs, senators, and once a 4-star general. She did not lose. I had never met her before this week. Marcus recommended her. She had no ties to Franklin's network, no church membership, no donations received. Clean. I sat in her corner office and laid everything on her mahogany conference table. The lab results, the video footage, the photographs, the DNA test, the background report on Vanessa, the timeline connecting Franklin's testimony to Darnell's conception. Diane reviewed it in silence for 40 minutes. When she looked up, her face was hard. "This is not a family dispute, Mr. Mitchell," she said. "This is a RICO case. Conspiracy, attempted murder, fraud, perjury. And if what you are telling me about the original trial is true, obstruction of justice at the federal level." "It is true," I said, "and I can prove it." Diane picked up her phone. She dialed a number from memory. "Morrison," she said. "I have something for you. Domestic conspiracy, with federal implications. Falsified testimony from a 1984 trial. Possible evidence tampering by a witness who is now a public religious figure. I need a sit-down. Today." She hung up and looked at me. "Agent Morrison is FBI. White-collar crimes and public corruption. He owes me a favor. If Franklin tampered with evidence in your original trial, that is a federal offense. No statute of limitations on obstruction of justice when new evidence surfaces." By 6 that evening, I was sitting across from Agent Morrison in a secure conference room at the federal building. He was a compact man with gray temples and eyes that gave nothing away. He listened to my story. He reviewed the documents. He made no promises. But when I handed him the name of the prosecuting attorney from my original case and the case file number, something shifted behind his eyes. "We will pull the archived evidence," he said. "If your story checks out, if Franklin altered documents or suppressed exculpatory evidence, we move on him. Conspiracy to commit fraud, obstruction of justice, and given the current poisoning evidence, accessory to attempted murder." He stood and shook my hand. "Mr. Mitchell, how long can you maintain your cover at home?" "As long as it takes," I said. He nodded. "We will be in touch within 72 hours. I drove home that night feeling something I had not felt in 40 years. Vindication was coming. Not the bitter, hollow kind. The kind that arrives with handcuffs and federal indictments. My phone rang as I pulled into my driveway. "Diane?" "Morrison called me back," she said. "They pulled the original case file from the federal archive. Harold, the alibi documents that would have cleared you in '84, they were removed from the evidence box. The chain of custody log shows they were checked out by one person 2 days before your trial, Franklin Jenkins. He signed his own name. He was so confident you would never get out that he did not even bother to hide it." I sat in my truck, engine idling, staring at the red front door of my house. The house Lorraine had chosen. The door she had painted. "You were innocent," Diane said softly. "You were always innocent. And now we can prove it." I turned off the engine. The silence was enormous. "I know," I said. "I have known for 40 years. The difference is, now the world will know too." I hung up. I looked at the house. Behind that door, Lorraine was preparing dinner, humming her hymns, checking the water filter, planning my funeral. 6 days until the consecration ceremony. 6 days until 800 people gathered in that church to crown Franklin a bishop. 6 days until every screen in that building came under my control. I stepped out of the truck. I put on my dying man face. I grabbed my cane, and I walked toward the door, toward the woman who wanted me dead, with a smile that felt like loading a gun. Sunday morning, 5 days until the consecration. I stood in front of my bathroom mirror at 5:30, with Patricia beside me holding a theatrical makeup kit. The same products used in Hollywood to make healthy actors look like they were dying of cancer. She dabbed a sponge beneath my eyes, creating hollow purple shadows. She applied gray-green tint to my cheeks, making my dark skin look ashen. She deepened the lines around my mouth until I looked 10 years older. When she finished, I saw a man on the edge of the grave, staring back at me. Patricia stepped back. "Mr. Mitchell," she said quietly, "if they call an ambulance, a real doctor will know you are healthy in under a minute." "Then I cannot let them call an ambulance," I said. She handed me a small vial. "Ipecac," she explained. 2 drops under your tongue will induce convincing nausea and sweating within 60 seconds. Use it sparingly." I put the vial in my pocket. Another weapon. Lorraine was awake by 7. I was already in the kitchen, my head resting on my arms. The posture of defeat. I heard her footsteps on the stairs. Slow. Measured. "Honey, are you all right?" Her voice was soft, concerned, flawless. I lifted my head slowly, let my eyes droop, let my hand tremble as I reached for the water glass. The clean water she did not know was clean. "I am tired, Lorraine," I said. My voice was a rasp. "My hands will not stop shaking." She walked to me, put her hand on my forehead. Her palm was cool and dry. She was checking my temperature the way you check produce at the grocery store, squeezing the fruit to see if it is ripe enough to pick. "Drink your water, honey," she said. "You know hydration helps." I picked up the glass, raised it to my lips, drank long and slow. Let the water drip down my chin as if I did not have the strength to swallow properly. Lorraine watched the way a farmer watches rain fall on parched soil, with satisfaction, with the certainty that the harvest was coming. "Good," she whispered. "Keep drinking." 3 hours later, I executed the next phase. I was in the living room. Lorraine was in the kitchen on the phone, her voice low. I reached into my pocket and placed 2 drops of Ipecac under my tongue. My stomach lurched. Cold sweat broke out on my forehead. I stood up, swayed, grabbed the armrest. Then I let go. I hit the floor hard. My shoulder took the impact. I rolled onto my back, limbs loose, eyes closed, breathing shallow. Almost nothing. "Lorraine," I gasped. Once. Weak. Her footsteps came. Not running. Walking. Click. 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 The measured pace of a woman in no hurry to save a dying man. She appeared in the doorway. Stood there watching, making sure. Then she spoke. Not to me. Into her phone. "Hold on," she said. She walked closer. Knelt down. Put 2 fingers against my neck. Her touch was clinical. She was not feeling for life. She was feeling for death. "He is down," she said into the phone. Calm. Steady. Almost bored. He collapsed in the living room, barely breathing. "I think the kidneys are finally going." She stood up. Walked to the window. I opened my eyes just a sliver. Her silhouette against the afternoon light, leaning on the window frame, phone pressed to her ear, looking out at the yard, like she was already planning renovations. "It is almost time, baby," she said. Her voice dropped into something intimate, a voice she had never used with me. 40 years of waiting. We are almost free. Once he goes, the guardianship kicks in. Darnell signs everything to the trust. And then it is just us. The way it should have been from the beginning. She laughed softly. A lover's laugh. "I will call the ambulance in 20 minutes, she said. "I need to make sure he is really gone first. No point wasting a trip to the emergency room if he pulls through again. This time I need it to be final." She hung up, walked back, stood over me. I felt her eyes studying my face, measuring the distance between life and death. Then she stepped over my body and walked to the kitchen. I heard the clink of a wine glass. She was pouring herself a drink while her husband lay dying on the carpet. 20 minutes. She was willing to let me die for 20 minutes before calling anyone. Not because she was scared, not because she was frozen with panic, because she wanted to make sure the job was done. I stayed on the floor for 8 more minutes. Then I moved. A coughing fit, a gasp, a slow, confused awakening. Lorraine came back from the kitchen. She performed surprise, performed relief, knelt beside me and stroked my face. "Oh, thank God," she said. "Elijah, you scared me. You just collapsed." I was about to call the ambulance. I looked up at her. Her eyes were wet. Manufactured tears. I was about to call. 20 minutes of silence. 20 minutes of wine. 20 minutes of planning my funeral with her lover on the phone. I let her help me to the couch. I let her fuss. I let her bring me water and a blanket. I let her believe she was still in control. But the cameras were rolling. The audio was clean. Every word she said to Franklin was now time-stamped and encrypted on a server she would never find. Her confession, her countdown, her lover's laugh. I had played dead once before. 5 years in a prison cell for a crime I did not commit. That was involuntary. This was by choice. And this time, when I rose from the dead, I would not be walking out alone and broken. I would be walking out with fire in my hands. 4 days until the consecration. 4 days until Franklin stood on that stage expecting a crown. He was going to get something very different. Monday evening. 4 days left. The doorbell rang at 7:15. I was on the couch, still wearing the gray pallor Patricia had reapplied that morning. Lorraine answered the door. I heard voices in the hallway. Vanessa's sharp tone. Darnell's quiet murmur. Then footsteps moving toward the living room. Vanessa walked in first. She was carrying a leather binder under her arm. Professional. Organized. The kind of binder that holds documents designed to end a man's autonomy. She was wearing a fitted black dress and heels that clicked on my hardwood floor like a metronome counting down. Darnell followed behind her. My son. Or rather, the man I had raised as my son. He looked uncomfortable. His eyes darted around the room, landing on everything except me. He was wearing a wrinkled button-down shirt. No tie. His hands were stuffed in his pockets. He looked like a man being led somewhere he did not want to go. "Dad," he said. His voice was thin. "How are you feeling?" I looked up at him from the couch. I let my eyes be glassy, unfocused. I let my voice crack. "Been better, son. Been better. The doctor says my kidneys are struggling. Your mother is taking good care of me, though." Lorraine appeared behind them. She was wringing her hands, playing the worried wife, the devoted caretaker. She caught Vanessa's eye and nodded slightly. A signal. Permission to proceed. Vanessa sat down on the ottoman across from me. She placed the binder on the coffee table and opened it with practiced fingers. The pages were tabbed with colored flags. Green, yellow, red. Each section marked and annotated. This was not improvised. This was planned. "Elijah," Vanessa said. Her voice was sugar over steel. "We need to talk about something important. About your future. About protecting the family." I blinked slowly, confused, disoriented. The dying man who could barely follow a conversation. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" She pulled out a stack of papers and slid them across the table toward me. "Medical power of attorney," she said, "and a general guardianship designation. Given your recent episodes, your doctor feels it would be responsible to have someone authorized to make decisions on your behalf. In case you are incapacitated." I stared at the papers. I could read them clearly. My mind was sharp as a blade, but I pretended to squint. Pretended the words were blurring. I picked up the first page with trembling fingers and held it close to my face. "Guardianship," I murmured. "That sounds serious. Who would be the guardian? Darnell, Vanessa said quickly. Your son. It makes sense. He is your next of kin. He knows the business. He knows your wishes. I looked at Darnell. He was staring at the floor. His jaw was tight. His shoulders were hunched. He did not look like a man eager to take control. He looked like a man being pushed off a cliff. Son, I said softly, is this what you want? Darnell opened his mouth. He hesitated. I saw something in his eyes. A flicker, a tiny spark of conscience struggling against the wind. He looked at me, and for a moment, I thought he was going to say no. I thought he was going to reach across that coffee table and push those papers back. I just want what is best for you, Dad, he said finally. His voice barely a whisper. Then sign it, Vanessa snapped. Her patience was gone. The mask slipped for just a second, revealing the cold machinery beneath. We discussed this, Terrence. Sign the papers so your father can rest. She called him Terrence, his middle name. The name she used when she was commanding him, when she was pulling the strings. Darnell flinched. He looked at Vanessa. She stared back with eyes that could cut glass. There was no love in that look. There was ownership. There was threat. There was the unspoken promise that if he did not comply, there would be consequences worse than guilt. Darnell reached for the pen. His hand was shaking. Not from age like mine, from fear. But Dad, he started again. Maybe we should wait. Maybe we should talk to your lawyer first. The sound came before I could register what happened. Sharp, wet. The crack of an open palm against skin. Vanessa had slapped him. Across the face. In my living room. In front of me and his mother. Do not be difficult, Vanessa hissed. Her voice was barely audible, but it carried the weight of absolute authority. Sign it. Now. We do not have time for your weakness. Darnell's cheek was red. His eyes were wet. He did not look at me. He did not look at his mother. He just looked at the paper. And he signed. His hand moved across the page in a shaky scrawl. The sound of the pen was small and final, like the click of a lock. Lorraine exhaled. Vanessa smiled. The transaction was complete. My son had just signed away my autonomy to a trust controlled by the man who stole his mother and destroyed his father. I watched it happen. I let it happen. Because the cameras were watching too. I let 30 seconds of silence pass. Then I stirred on the couch. I pushed myself upright with exaggerated effort. I cleared my throat. I have been thinking, I said. My voice was weak, but clear enough to command attention. All three of them turned to look at me. About Bishop Franklin's consecration this weekend. I want to do something special. Lorraine's eyebrows rose. Special? I want to sponsor it, I said. The whole event. I want to pay for everything. The decorations. The catering. The technology. I want big screens. Cameras. A live broadcast. I want the whole world to see Franklin crowned. He has been my brother for 40 years. He deserves a celebration worthy of his service. I watched their faces cycle through confusion, suspicion, and then pure, unbridled greed. A sponsored event meant money flowing. It meant Harold still writing checks. It meant the dying man was still useful. Vanessa recovered first. That is incredibly generous, Elijah, she said. Her smile was wide and warm and completely manufactured. Franklin will be so moved. I looked at Darnell. He was still holding the pen. His signed guardianship papers sat on the table like a guilty verdict. He would not meet my eyes. I had watched him hesitate. I had watched him almost say no. Almost. But almost does not save a man's life. Almost does not undo a signature. He had the chance to be a son. He chose to be a coward. That told me everything I needed to know about what he deserved. Wednesday morning, 2 days until the consecration, I drove to Greater Faith Baptist with a cashier's check for $500,000 in my breast pocket. It sat against my chest like a heartbeat. $500,000 to build the gallows from which a bishop would hang. The church parking lot was busy. Maintenance crews were power washing the front steps. A florist's van was unloading arrangements near the side entrance. The building was being prepared for royalty, a coronation, a crowning moment for the most beloved spiritual leader in Memphis. If only they knew what lived beneath those robes. I parked in the handicapped spot near the front door. I did not have a permit, but nobody stops a dying man with a cane. I climbed out slowly, leaned on the stick, dragged my leg. The costume was second nature now. I had been wearing it for over a week. The dying patriarch. The fading king come to bless his successor. Franklin's office door was open. I could hear him inside, talking on the phone. His voice boomed with self-importance. Yes, the screen should be at least 20 feet, he was saying. I want the audience to feel the presence of the Holy Spirit through the visuals. This is not a small-town service. This is a national event. I knocked on the doorframe. Franklin looked up. His face split into that wide, predatory smile. The smile of a man who sees his meal walking toward him on its own legs. "Harold!" He hung up immediately and stood. He came around the desk with his arms wide. "Brother, come in. Sit down. You look tired. Should you even be out of the house?" He guided me to the leather chair. The same chair I had sat in when I came to steal his DNA. The same office where he had prayed over me with hands that had touched my wife. I let him fuss. I let him pour me water from his crystal pitcher. I did not drink it. "Franklin," I said. My voice was thin, carefully modulated. "I came because I want to do something for you. Something big." He sat on the edge of his desk, looking down at me. His eyes were curious, hungry. "What is it, brother?" I reached into my jacket. Slowly, my hand trembled as I pulled out the check. I held it in front of me, like a communion wafer. "An offering. $500,000, I said. "For your consecration. I want it to be perfect, Franklin. I want the whole world to see you crowned." Franklin's eyes went wide. He reached for the check. His fingers brushed mine as he took it. His skin was dry and cool. The skin of a snake. "Harold," he breathed. This is extraordinary. You do not have to do this." "I want to," I said. "You have been my rock for 40 years. My spiritual father. My brother in Christ. This ceremony should reflect the magnitude of your service." Franklin looked at the numbers on the check. I could see his mind calculating. Not the glory of God. The glory of Franklin. The cameras. The attention. The prestige. "What do you envision?" he asked, tucking the check into his breast pocket with a speed that suggested he was afraid I might change my mind. I leaned forward. I let my eyes brighten with the enthusiasm of a man who still believed in his friends. "I want 6 cameras," I said. "High definition, multiple angles. I want a 20-foot LED screen behind the pulpit. I want the broadcast to go out on your YouTube channel, the church network satellite feed, and the local news affiliates. I want 800 people in those pews, and 50,000 watching online." Franklin clapped his hands together. His gold rings caught the light. "It shall be done," he said. "We have the infrastructure. The media team has been preparing. With this funding, we can upgrade everything. Hire professional camera operators. Get the satellite uplink." "Good," I said. "And Franklin, I want to speak. A short tribute. 5 minutes. Before you receive the mantle, I want to honor you publicly, in front of everyone." Franklin placed his hand over his heart. "It would be the highlight of the ceremony, Harold. Your words carry weight in this community. When Elijah Mitchell speaks, people listen." I nodded. I stood up slowly. Franklin rushed to help me, gripping my elbow. His touch was possessive, the touch of a man holding on to his investment. "You have always been my greatest blessing, Harold," he said. His voice was thick with emotion. Manufactured emotion. "God put you in my life for a reason." I looked him in the eye. "Yes, he did, Franklin," I said. "Yes, he did." I walked out of his office, down the hallway with its photographs, past the stained glass windows I had paid for, through the side entrance and into the parking lot. The sun was warm on my face. The air smelled of fresh mulch from the landscaping crew. I did not go to my truck. I walked around the back of the building to the maintenance entrance. A young man was waiting there, leaning against the wall. Derek. He was 26 years old, wiry, with thick glasses and a lanyard full of keys. He was the church's audio-visual technician. He had been there for 3 years. He was also Marcus Webb's nephew. Mr. Mitchell, Derek said quietly. Everything is set. I have full access to the broadcast system. Master control is in the booth above the balcony. I can override any feed from there. I handed him a flash drive. Small. Silver. Heavier than it looked. This drive contains 5 video files and 2 audio recordings, I said. On Sunday, when I give the signal, you switch the broadcast feed from the live cameras to this drive. You loop it through the main screen, the overflow rooms, and the satellite uplink simultaneously. Can you do that? Derek took the drive. He turned it over in his hand. Yes, sir, he said. 1 keystroke. The whole system flips to your content. Nobody in the booth can override it without the master password, and I changed the master password this morning. Good, I said. You do this and you disappear. Monday morning there will be a cashier's check for $50,000 in your uncle's safe with your name on it. Derek nodded. He slipped the drive into his pocket and walked back inside without another word. I walked to my truck. Diane's black sedan was parked 3 spaces down. She was in the driver's seat. Window cracked. I leaned against her door. Morrison confirms FBI will be staged 1 block south in unmarked vehicles, she said, without looking up from her phone. 4 agents, plus the lead. They move on your signal or on visual confirmation of criminal confession broadcast live, whichever comes first. Good, I said. She looked up at me. Her eyes were steady, but there was concern in them. Harold. After Sunday, there is no going back. Every relationship, every memory, it all burns. I straightened up. I looked at the church. The steeple caught the midday sun. The cross on top gleamed like a blade. It burned a long time ago, Diane, I said. I am just showing people the ashes. I climbed into my truck, started the engine, looked at the church one last time in the rearview mirror. Franklin was probably inside right now, calling the media team, upgrading the cameras, preparing the stage for his greatest moment. He had no idea he was building his own scaffold, and I had handed him the hammer and the nails. Saturday night. The eve of destruction. I sat in my study with the lights off, the blue glow of the monitor painting shadows across the walls. On the screen, a live feed from the camera Marcus had planted in Franklin's dining room 3 days ago. The image was sharp. The audio was clean. And the scene playing out was a celebration. Franklin sat at the head of his mahogany table. He was wearing a silk robe over his undershirt, a glass of Dom Perignon in his hand. His smile was wide and loose. The smile of a man who believed he had already won. Lorraine sat to his right, her chair pulled close to his. She was not wearing her church clothes. She was wearing a red dress, low cut, expensive, the kind of dress she never wore around me. Her hand rested on Franklin's thigh. Familiar, possessive, the hand of a woman who was done hiding. Vanessa sat across from them, scrolling through her phone while sipping champagne from a crystal flute. She looked bored, victorious, but bored. The way a general looks after the battle is won, and only the paperwork remains. They were celebrating my death. A death that had not happened yet. A death they were certain was coming. Franklin raised his glass. To tomorrow, he said. His voice carried that pulpit resonance even in his own dining room. To the Mitchell Empire becoming the Franklin legacy. 40 years of patience. 40 years of faith. And tomorrow, it all comes home. Lorraine clinked her glass against his. To us, she said softly. To finally being free. Vanessa did not look up from her phone. She raised her glass absently. To getting paid, she said. Then she laughed. It was the only honest sound in the room. I watched them drink. I watched Franklin lean over and kiss Lorraine on the mouth. A long, deep kiss. The kiss of lovers who no longer needed to pretend. Lorraine's eyes closed. Her hand moved from his thigh to his face. She cradled his jaw like he was precious, like he was the man she had chosen 40 years ago. My jaw tightened. My fingers curled into the armrests of my chair. The leather groaned under the pressure. I wanted to reach through the screen and tear them apart. I wanted to drive to his house and kick down his door. I wanted to show them what a man who survived 5 years in prison could do with his bare hands. But I did not move. I watched. I recorded. I waited. Franklin pulled back from the kiss. "There is one concern," he said, refilling his glass. "Harold seemed lucid yesterday. Lorraine told me he was talking about the ceremony, making plans, suggesting he wanted to speak. He is fading," Lorraine said firmly. "Trust me. He barely made it to the bathroom this morning. His hands shake so badly he cannot button his own shirt. By tomorrow night, the arsenic will have done enough damage that even if he survives the weekend, no doctor will certify him competent. The guardianship is signed. Darnell will do what we tell him. It is done." "And if he tries something at the ceremony?" Vanessa asked, finally looking up from her phone. "What if he goes off script?" Franklin chuckled. "What is he going to do? He is a 70-year-old man who can barely stand. He will give his little speech, thank me, cry a little, and sit down. And by Monday, he will be in a hospital bed, with my name on his power of attorney." They clinked glasses again. 3 predators toasting over the bones of their prey. They had no doubt, no hesitation, no fear. They were absolutely certain that tomorrow was their day. I turned off the monitor. The screen went black. My reflection stared back at me, an old man in the dark. But my eyes were not the eyes of a dying man. They were the eyes of something else entirely. My phone buzzed. The screen lit up. Darnell. I stared at his name for 3 rings before I answered. "Dad?" His voice was quiet, almost a whisper. "Are you awake?" "I am awake, son," I said. My voice was gentle. It surprised me. After everything, there was still something soft left when I heard his voice. "What is wrong?" "I do not know," he said. "Something feels wrong. About tomorrow. About everything. Vanessa has been on the phone all night. She keeps going outside to talk. She will not tell me who she is calling." I closed my eyes. He was sensing it. The edges of the conspiracy were fraying, and even a man as blind as Darnell could feel the threads pulling loose. "Everything is fine, son," I said. "Get some rest. Tomorrow is a big day." A long pause. Then, quiet as a prayer. "Dad, I love you. You know that, right?" I gripped the phone. My knuckles went white. Did he love me? Did the man who signed my guardianship papers while his wife's handprint was still red on his cheek love me? Did the man who chose silence over courage love me? "I know," I said. "Good night, Darnell." I hung up. I set the phone face down on the desk. I did not want to see his name. The house was silent for hours. I sat in the dark, running through the sequence in my head. The timing. The signals. The order of revelations. Video first, then audio, then DNA, then the prison file. Layer by layer. Truth by truth. Until there was nothing left to hide behind. At 2 in the morning, I heard the front door open. Lorraine's heels on the hardwood. Click, click, click. She moved through the dark house. With the confidence of a woman who owned every shadow. She came upstairs. I heard her pause outside my study door. The handle turned slightly, but the door was locked. She moved on. I heard the master bedroom door open and close. Silence for a minute. Then her footsteps again, coming down the hall. She was coming to check on me. I had moved to the bedroom before she came upstairs. I was in bed, eyes closed, breathing slow. The door creaked open. A sliver of hallway light fell across my face. I kept my breathing even. Deep. The breath of a man in medicated sleep. Lorraine walked to my side of the bed. She stood over me. I could smell the champagne on her breath. I could smell Franklin's cologne on her skin, sandalwood and betrayal. She leaned down. Her lips brushed my ear. Her whisper was barely a sound. "One more day, you stubborn old mule. One more day, and I am free." She straightened up. I heard her walk to the nightstand, the soft clink of glass. She was checking the water pitcher beside my bed, making sure it was full, making sure the poison was ready for my morning drink. Satisfied, she left. The door closed. Her footsteps faded down the hall. I opened my eyes in the darkness. The ceiling was invisible above me. The house settled around me with small creaks and groans. "Tomorrow, Lorraine," I whispered to the empty room. "But freedom will not taste the way you think it will." I reached under my pillow. The flash drive was there. A backup. Identical to the one Derek had. Insurance. I turned it over between my fingers in the dark. Then I closed my eyes. And for the first time in 2 weeks I slept. Deep and dreamless. The sleep of a man who has made peace with what comes next. The sleep of a man who knows that when the sun rises, the war ends. One way or another. I woke before the sun. The bedroom was still dark, but my eyes were open and clear. No grogginess. No confusion. The sleep had been short but absolute. Like the last breath before a dive. I sat on the edge of the bed. My feet touched the cold floor. I flexed my hands. No trembling. The arsenic had been out of my system for nearly 2 weeks now. My kidneys were recovering. My strength was returning. The man who stood up from that bed was not the dying patriarch they expected. He was the man who had loaded crates at dawn for 30 years. The man who poured foundations in the Memphis heat until his boots cracked. The man they forgot existed beneath the suit and the checkbook. I showered. I shaved. I put on the navy blue 3-piece suit I had purchased on Thursday from a tailor downtown. Custom fit. Italian wool. The same shade of blue I wore when I signed my first $1 million contract. It was the suit of a man who owned rooms. Not the baggy, wrinkled clothes of a man losing his grip on life. I stood before the mirror. No makeup today. No gray tint. No hollow shadows under my eyes. Just Harold Mitchell, 69 years old. Spine straight, jaw set, eyes that could cut through steel. I picked up my cane. I carried it to the truck. I did not lean on it. I threw it in the back seat. I would use it one last time to walk into that church, and then I would never touch it again. The drive to Greater Faith Baptist took 18 minutes. The morning was crisp. October sunlight slanted through the windshield, gold and sharp. The streets of Memphis were quiet. Sunday morning stillness. The calm before. I parked 3 blocks away. I did not want them to see my truck in the lot. Not yet. I walked the 3 blocks with my cane, dragging my leg, hunching my shoulders. The neighborhood was waking up. A woman watering her garden waved. A man walking his dog nodded. They saw an old man struggling toward church. They saw exactly what I wanted them to see. The building came into view. Greater Faith Baptist. White brick. Tall steeple. The stained glass windows catching the morning light like jewels in a crown. My jewels. My crown. Built with my money and stolen with my trust. The parking lot was already full. Cars lined the street for 2 blocks in every direction. BMWs. Cadillacs. Mercedes. The vehicles of Memphis's black elite. Business owners. Lawyers. Doctors. Politicians. Everyone who mattered in this community was inside those walls, waiting to witness the crowning of a king. 800 people, 6 cameras, 1 20-foot LED screen, a satellite uplink broadcasting to 50,000 viewers online. Franklin had used my money well. The stage was magnificent, and he had no idea it was a guillotine. I entered through the main doors. The foyer was packed. Ushers in white gloves directed traffic. The sound of the choir warming up drifted from the sanctuary. Voices raised in harmony. Joyful noise. I moved through the crowd slowly. People parted for me. Hands reached out to touch my shoulder. "Mr. Mitchell, You look wonderful. So brave of you to come. Harold, we have been praying for you. God is good. I smiled. I nodded. I played the part one final time. The frail old benefactor. The dying king come to bless his successor. They pitied me. They admired my strength. They had no idea what was about to happen. I entered the sanctuary. The scale of it hit me, even though I had paid for every square foot. Vaulted ceilings. Polished wood pews stretching back in perfect rows. The massive LED screen hung behind the choir loft, currently displaying the church logo and the words, Bishop Franklin D. Jenkins Consecration Ceremony in gold lettering. The cameras were positioned on tripods at strategic angles, red lights glowing. Live. The front row was reserved. I could see them from the back of the aisle. Lorraine, white hat with a wide brim, cream dress, pearl necklace I had given her for our 30th anniversary. She was dabbing her eyes with a lace handkerchief, the devoted wife supporting her ailing husband in his generous act. Next to her, Vanessa, modest navy dress, hair pulled back, holding Darnell's hand with a grip that looked more like a leash than a caress. And Darnell, gray suit, pale face, sweat on his upper lip. He looked like a man waiting for a verdict. And there, on the raised platform at the front of the sanctuary, stood Franklin, Bishop Franklin D. Jenkins. He wore a white robe with gold embroidery that caught the light with every movement. A purple stole draped across his shoulders. His head was high. His smile was radiant. He looked like a man touched by heaven. He looked up and saw me entering. His smile widened. He raised his hand and beckoned me forward. The gesture of a king welcoming a loyal subject. I walked down the center aisle, slow, cane tapping. 800 heads turned. The whispers started. Look at him. So thin, so frail. God bless that man. I absorbed their sympathy, like armor. Every pitying glance made what came next more powerful. I reached the front. Lorraine looked up at me. She smiled. That smile. 40 years of that smile. She tapped her purse, a signal. She wanted to make sure I had not forgotten the checkbook. She still thought this was about money. She still thought I was here to bless her lover and sign over my kingdom. Franklin stepped down from the platform. He took my arm with both hands. His grip was firm, proprietary. The grip of a man, holding his possession. Brother, he said into the microphone clipped to his robe. His voice carried through the speakers, warm and rich. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Harold Mitchell, my dearest friend, my brother in Christ, he has asked to say a few words before we begin the ceremony. Let us receive him with love. Applause, warm, genuine. 800 people clapping for a man they thought was dying. Franklin guided me up the 3 steps to the platform. I let him. I leaned on him. I felt his strength supporting my weight. The irony was so thick I could taste it. He positioned me behind the podium. The microphone was at my chin. The LED screen was behind me. 6 cameras pointed at my face. The red lights blinked steadily. I looked out at the sea of faces. I looked at Lorraine in the front row, eyes shining with manufactured pride. I looked at Vanessa, already mentally calculating numbers. I looked at Darnell, who could not meet my gaze. I looked up at the balcony, the AV booth. Behind the tinted glass, I knew Derek was there, his finger hovering over the key. I gripped the podium with both hands. I did not lean on the cane. I stood straight. My voice, when it came, was not the rasp of a dying man. It was clear. It carried. Friends, I said. Family. Children of God. You came here today to witness a crowning, and I promise you, you will witness exactly that. But first, let me show you something. I looked up at the balcony. I gave one slow nod. The massive LED screen behind me flickered. The church logo vanished. The gold lettering disappeared. In its place, grainy footage filled the 20-foot display. Black and white, time-stamped. The kitchen of my home. The sanctuary went quiet. 800 people stared at the screen, expecting a montage. expecting family photographs, expecting the sentimental tribute of a dying man honoring his pastor. Instead, they saw a woman standing at a kitchen counter, humming. The audio kicked in through the professional sound system I had paid for. Crystal clear. The melody of His Eye is on the Sparrow floated through the vaulted ceiling. Like a hymn from hell, the woman on screen opened a water filtration unit. She reached into her purse. She pulled out a small bag containing a white capsule. She inserted it into the carbon chamber with fingers that moved from memory. Click. Snap. She closed the unit. She washed her hands. She kept humming. A murmur rippled through the congregation. People leaned forward. They recognized the woman on screen. They recognized Lorraine Mitchell, the First Lady of the front pew, the prayer warrior, the devoted wife. The footage continued. On screen, Lorraine picked up her phone. Her voice was amplified to every corner of the building. He is coming downstairs. I put a fresh one in. The levels should spike by Wednesday. His hands are already shaking. 2 more weeks, and his kidneys will shut down. Then we call the coroner and say it was old age. The murmur became a gasp. Then the gasp became a roar. Voices erupted. People stood from their seats. Someone in the back shouted, "Lord have mercy." Lorraine in the front row shot to her feet. Her face was white. Her mouth was open. She spun around, looking at the screen, looking at the projection booth, looking for someone to stop what was happening. "Turn it off," she screamed. Her voice was shrill, hysterical. It cut through the chaos. "That is fake. It is AI. My husband is sick. His mind is gone. He fabricated this to hurt me." She pointed a shaking finger at me. "He is delusional," she shouted at the congregation. "He has dementia. The doctors said his brain is deteriorating. You cannot believe this." I gripped the podium. I leaned into the microphone. My voice was thunder. "Sit down, Lorraine." The 2 words hit the room like a hammer on an anvil. The crowd fell silent. Lorraine froze. She stared at me. For the first time in 40 years, she saw me. Not the fool. Not the mark. Not the dying man. She saw the man who had survived prison. The man who built an empire from dirt. The man she had underestimated every single day of their marriage. "I am not done," I said. The screen changed. The second video began. Color footage this time. The living room of Darnell's townhouse. Saturday afternoon. Lorraine walking in with a bottle of champagne. Vanessa greeting her with a warm embrace. The pop of a cork. 2 glasses filled. "To the old fool finally giving up," Lorraine said on screen, raising her glass. "He built it all, and we will take it all," Vanessa replied. The congregation watched in frozen horror. Mothers covered their children's ears. Men gripped the pews in front of them. The deacons along the walls stood rigid, their faces carved from stone. On screen, Vanessa continued, "Uncle Frank says 2 more weeks at this dosage. His kidneys should start shutting down by then." Uncle Frank. The words hit the room like a bullet. 800 heads swiveled toward the platform, toward the man in the white robe with gold embroidery, toward Bishop Franklin. Franklin's smile was gone. His face was gray. He took a step backward, his hand reaching for the altar railing as if the floor had tilted beneath him. "Make it 1, Lorraine said on the screen. Her voice was flat and final. "I am tired of pretending. I am tired of sleeping next to a man I have hated for 40 years. The room exploded. People were on their feet, shouting, crying. A woman in the choir dropped her hymnal. It hit the floor with a crack that sounded like a gunshot. Someone was calling for police on their phone. The ushers at the doors looked at each other in confusion, unsure whether to hold people in or let them out. Vanessa in the front row lunged from her seat. She moved fast for a woman in heels, heading for the side exit near the choir room. But the deacons were faster. 2 men stepped into her path, arms crossed, faces immovable. These were men I had employed, men whose daughters I had sent to college, men who understood loyalty. Vanessa slammed into them and bounced back. She turned, looking for another way out. There was none. Every exit was covered. "It is a deep fake!" Vanessa screamed, her composure shattered. "He paid someone to make this. It is not real. None of this is real." I looked down at her from the podium. I felt nothing. No satisfaction. No pity. Just the cold machinery of justice turning its gears. I looked at Lorraine. She had collapsed back into her pew. She was not screaming anymore. She was staring at the screen where her own face was frozen mid-toast. Champagne glass raised. Smiling. The image of a woman celebrating murder. I looked at Franklin. He was pressed against the altar, his back to the cross. His eyes were darting, calculating, looking for an angle, a lie, an explanation. He opened his mouth to speak. I spoke first. "But the poison was just the beginning," I said. My voice was steady, controlled. The sanctuary fell silent again. They were hooked. They were horrified. And they could not look away. There is a deeper sin in this room. A sin that has been hidden for 40 years. A sin that starts with a prison sentence that should never have happened. I turned my head slowly. I looked directly at Franklin. He stopped moving. His mouth closed. His face went from gray to white. He knew. In that moment, standing beneath the cross he had desecrated with every sermon, he knew what was coming next. And there was nowhere to run. I let the silence hold for 5 full seconds. 5 seconds in a room of 800 people feels like an eternity. I could hear the air conditioning humming. I could hear someone crying softly in the 3rd row. I could hear Franklin's breathing behind me, quick and shallow, like a trapped animal. Then I spoke. "Play the next file," I said. Not loudly. I did not need volume. The microphone carried my voice like a blade through silk. The screen changed. This time it was not video. It was audio. A waveform rippled across the screen in real time, synced to the words pouring from the speakers. The recording was from Sunday, from my living room floor, from the moment Lorraine thought I was dying. Her voice filled the sanctuary. "It is almost time, baby." The words were intimate, tender, the voice of a woman speaking to her lover. 40 years of waiting, we are almost free. Once he goes, the guardianship kicks in. Darnell signs everything to the trust. And then it is just us, the way it should have been from the beginning. Then another voice, deeper, familiar, a voice that had thundered from this very pulpit for 3 decades. "After the ceremony, it is all ours." Franklin's voice, unmistakable. "The Mitchell Empire becomes the Franklin legacy. We have earned this." The congregation turned as one body toward the platform, toward the man in white and gold who was currently pressing himself against the altar like a cornered rat. Franklin's mouth moved, but no sound came out. His lips formed words that never reached the air. His hands gripped the altar railing so hard his knuckles were gray. Lorraine in the front row let out a sound that was not quite a scream, and not quite a moan. It was the sound of a woman watching the last wall of her fortress crumble. She slumped sideways against the pew. Her white hat fell off. Her handkerchief dropped to the floor, but I was not finished. The audio was just the bridge. The DNA was the destination. The screen changed again. A document appeared. Clinical. Sterile. The letterhead of Chen Forensic Laboratory. The font was large enough to read from the balcony. Every word was a verdict. Paternity test results. Subject A, Darnell Harold Mitchell. Subject B, Franklin Delano Jenkins. Probability of paternity, 99.9%. The sound that came from the congregation was not a gasp. It was a collective groan, a sound of physical pain, as if 800 people had been struck simultaneously. They looked at Franklin. They looked at Darnell. They saw what I had finally seen. The forehead, the jaw, the ears. 32 years of evidence that had been hanging in plain sight. Darnell stood up. His movement was slow, mechanical, like a man rising from underwater. He turned his head toward the screen. He read the words. He read them again. Then he turned to look at Franklin on the platform. Then at Lorraine beside him. Then at me, behind the podium. No, he said. His voice cracked like dry wood. Dad. No. That is not. No. I looked down at him. The boy I raised. The boy I taught to pour concrete. The boy whose first bicycle I held steady on a summer afternoon 30 years ago. He was not my blood. He had never been my blood. And looking at him now, broken and bewildered in the front row of a church that was burning down around him, I felt something I did not expect. Not rage, not satisfaction. Grief. But grief does not stop the truth. I am not your father, Darnell, I said into the microphone. My voice was level, controlled, but it carried a weight that bowed the room. I never was. I was the man who paid the bills. The man who worked 18-hour days while your real father preached from this pulpit and slept in my bed. Darnell shook his head. He kept shaking it. His hands were at his temples, pressing inward, as if he could crush the truth before it took root. He looked at Lorraine. Mom, he pleaded. Mom, tell him it is a lie. Lorraine did not speak. She did not move. Her silence was the loudest confession in the room. The screen changed one final time. A scanned document appeared. Faded paper. Official stamps. A header that read Federal Bureau of Investigation Evidence Chain of Custody Log. A date. March 14th, 1984. 2 days before my trial. A single line was highlighted. Item removed. Alibi documentation. And exculpatory financial records. Removed by Franklin D. Jenkins. Signature present. I turned around on the platform. I faced Franklin directly. He was trembling. Sweat streamed down his face, ruining the cologne and the confidence. His white robe was stained dark under the arms. He looked nothing like a bishop. He looked like a man who had just realized the ground beneath him was hollow. You put me in prison, Franklin, I said. My voice was calm, but it filled the building like smoke. You signed your name on the form that removed my alibi. You testified against me in court. You looked a jury in the eye and lied. You stole 5 years of my freedom because you wanted my wife. And then you watched me come home and raise your son and you called me brother. Franklin's mouth opened. Harold, he stammered. Brother, you do not understand. It was complicated. Lorraine and I, we were. It was not planned. I can explain. Please, let me explain. You preached about the shepherd protecting his flock, I said. I took one step toward him. He backed into the altar. The cross above him shook. But you were the wolf, Franklin. You were always the wolf. You put me in a cage so you could take everything that was mine. My wife, my son, my freedom, my money, and now you tried to take my life. I can explain, Franklin said again. His voice was high, desperate, broken. I looked at him. I looked at the man who had destroyed me and smiled about it for 4 decades. I felt the rage in my chest, hot and absolute. But I did not scream. I did not strike. I simply said the 2 words that would end his world. Explain to the FBI. As if summoned by the words themselves, the heavy oak doors at the rear of the sanctuary burst open. Sunlight flooded the aisle, and in that light, 6 figures in dark suits walked forward with badges on their belts and purpose in their stride. Agent Morrison led the formation. He was compact and deliberate, moving down the center aisle with the mechanical precision of a man who had done this 100 times before. His badge caught the light from the stained glass windows, flashing gold and blue. Behind him, 5 agents fanned out. 2 moved toward the platform. 2 flanked the front row. 1 positioned himself at the side exit where Vanessa had tried to escape earlier. The congregation pressed back into their pews. Some stood. Some sat frozen. A woman near the middle clutched her Bible to her chest and began praying aloud. The choir in the loft had gone silent. The only sound was the steady footfall of federal shoes on church carpet. Morrison reached the front of the sanctuary. He did not pause for ceremony. He did not acknowledge the robes or the stained glass or the cross hanging above the altar. He turned to face the platform and looked directly at Franklin. Franklin Delano Jenkins, Morrison said. His voice was flat. Official. The voice of the United States government. You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, obstruction of justice, perjury, destruction of federal evidence, and accessory to attempted murder. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Franklin did not move. He stood against the altar, his white robe now visibly stained with sweat, his gold embroidery catching the light in a way that looked less like glory and more like a cage. His mouth opened and closed. His hands shook at his sides. Then something broke inside him. The composure, the pastoral mask, the 30 years of authority he had built on lies. It all cracked at once. No, he said. His voice was high, panicked. You cannot do this. I am a man of God. This is my church. This is my house. You cannot arrest me in the house of the Lord. 2 agents climbed the platform steps. They were calm, professional. They reached for his arms. Franklin jerked back, pressing himself against the cross. The heavy wooden structure shifted on its mount, scraping against the wall. Do not touch me, Franklin shouted. He was sweating freely now. His robe clung to his body. I am anointed. I am consecrated. You do not have the authority. I answer to a higher power. I stepped forward. I was still at the podium, 3 feet from where Franklin was cornered. I looked at him, the man who baptized the son he fathered, the man who prayed over the food he was stealing, the man who put me in a cell and called it God's plan. God did not frame an innocent man, Franklin, I said. My voice was quiet, but the microphone carried it to every corner of the room. God did not steal another man's wife. God did not forge documents to destroy an alibi. God did not put arsenic in a man's water. You did. All of it, for 40 years. Franklin looked at me. The panic in his eyes shifted into something else, something desperate, something that almost looked like a plea. Harold, he whispered. Brother, we can talk about this. We can pray about this. Please. I shook my head. We are done talking, Franklin. We have been done for 40 years. You just did not know it yet. The agents took his arms. Franklin did not fight. The strength went out of him all at once, like air leaving a balloon. His legs buckled. They held him up. They turned him around. The handcuffs clicked. Cold steel on warm wrists. The sound echoed in the silent sanctuary. They walked him down the platform steps, past the podium, past the flowers, past the front row where his lover sat catatonic, and his son knelt broken. 800 people watched their bishop marched out in chains. Not a single person spoke in his defense. Not one voice rose to save him. Morrison turned to the front row. Lorraine Mitchell, he said. Lorraine did not react. She sat perfectly still, staring at nothing. Her white hat was on the floor. Her pearls were askew. Her hands rested in her lap, palms up, like a woman waiting to receive communion, or a sentence. 2 agents approached her. One spoke softly. Ma'am, please stand. Lorraine stood, slowly, her joints cracking, her body moving as if controlled by invisible strings. She did not protest. She did not scream. She did not claim innocence or cry about AI or point fingers. She was beyond that now. She was in a place where performance no longer mattered because the audience had already seen the truth. They cuffed her, gently. She did not flinch. They read her rights. She did not respond. She walked between the 2 agents with the posture of a sleepwalker. As she passed me, she turned her head. Our eyes met for the last time. There was nothing in her gaze. No hatred, no regret, no love, just emptiness. The hollow stare of a woman whose mask had been permanently removed and who had no face left underneath. Then Morrison pointed at Vanessa. She was pressed against the back of the pew, cornered between 2 deacons and an agent. Her modest dress was wrinkled. Her hair had come loose from its pins. She looked feral, trapped. Vanessa Renee Mitchell, Morrison began. Vanessa exploded. She lunged at the agent nearest to her, clawing at his face. Her nails caught his cheek, drawing a thin line of blood. She screamed words that were not words, just sounds of rage and desperation. "Get off me," she shrieked as two agents restrained her. "I am pregnant. You cannot touch me. I will sue every single one of you. This is entrapment. This is illegal. Elijah, tell them it was a joke." I looked down at her from the platform. The woman who had been planted in my family like a virus. The woman who called my son a meal ticket and slapped him when he hesitated. "It is no joke, Vanessa," I said calmly. "The poison is in the lab. The video is on the server. The conspiracy is documented in your own words. You are going to prison. And the only joke here is that you thought you were smarter than a man who built an empire with his bare hands." They dragged her out. She kicked. She screamed. She cursed. Her voice echoed off the vaulted ceiling until the heavy doors closed behind her and cut the sound dead. The sanctuary was quiet. The air felt thin. 800 people sat in their pews, stunned, processing what they had just witnessed. The destruction of a dynasty. The unmasking of a bishop. The fall of a family. I stood on the platform alone. The altar behind me was empty. The cross hung crooked on the wall, where Franklin had pressed against it. The cameras were still recording. The live stream was still running. Tens of thousands of people had just watched the truth set a building on fire. I looked down at the front row. One person remained. Darnell. He was on the floor between the pews, his forehead pressed to the carpet, his shoulders heaving with silent sobs. His wife was gone. His mother was gone. The man he thought was his spiritual father was gone. And the man he called Dad was standing above him, holding the detonator that had blown his world apart. He looked up at me. His eyes were swollen, red, broken. "Dad," he whispered. "Please." Harold Mitchell, 69, Memphis construction mogul, discovered his wife Lorraine poisoned his water with arsenic. His best friend Bishop Franklin fathered his son Darnell 40 years ago, after framing Harold for embezzlement, and his daughter-in-law Vanessa was Franklin's niece, planted as a spy. Harold gathered evidence: video, audio, DNA, FBI files, staged a fake decline, funded Franklin's consecration ceremony, and hijacked the broadcast before 800 congregants and 50,000 online viewers. FBI arrested Franklin, Lorraine, and Vanessa. Darnell collapsed on the sanctuary floor, pleading, "Dad, please." Harold remains on the platform alone. The sanctuary smelled like perfume and panic. 800 people had just watched 3 arrests happen in real time, and not a single one of them moved. The cameras were still rolling. The LED screen had gone dark, but the red recording lights on all 6 units blinked like heartbeats that refused to stop. I stood on the platform for what felt like an hour. It was probably 30 seconds. Below me, crumpled between the second and third pew, Darnell Mitchell lay on his knees with both hands flat against the carpet. His gray suit was wrinkled at the shoulders. His tie had come loose. He looked like a man who had been dropped from a great height and was still trying to understand which bones were broken. I stepped down from the platform. 1 step. 2. 3. My shoes echoed against the hardwood like a judge's gavel. The congregation parted without a word. Some of them reached for my arm as I passed. I did not stop. When I reached Darnell, I stood over him for 5 full seconds before I spoke. "Stand up." He did not move. I said, "Stand up, Darnell." His head lifted first. His eyes were destroyed. Red, wet, swollen at the edges. Mucus ran from his nose, and he did not bother to wipe it. He looked at me the way a drowning man looks at the surface of the water, knowing he cannot reach it. "Dad," he whispered. "I didn't know. I swear to God, I didn't know." I believed him. That was the worst part. I looked at this 39-year-old man, this child I had raised from diapers, taught to ride a bicycle on Poplar Avenue, driven to his first day of college in my old Ford pickup, and I believed every word. He did not know Franklin was his father. He did not know Lorraine was poisoning me. He did not know Vanessa was a spy. But he signed those papers. He signed guardianship documents that would have stripped me of every legal right I possessed. He signed them because a woman slapped him once and raised her voice. He did not call me. He did not call a lawyer. He did not stand up. Get off the floor, I said. My voice was quieter now. Not softer. Quieter. There is a difference. Darnell rose. His knees shook. He grabbed the edge of the pew to steady himself and faced me with the posture of a boy waiting to be hit. You raised me, he said. You are my father. Blood doesn't change that. I let those words hang between us for a long time. The congregation watched in absolute silence. Somewhere behind me, a woman was crying softly into her hands. The live stream counter on the back monitor read 63,000 viewers. You are right, I said. I raised you. I fed you. I paid for your education, your first car, your wedding, your house. I gave you a position in my company and a salary you did not earn. I did all of that because I believed you were my son. Darnell's chin trembled. But a son protects his father, Darnell. A son questions the paper before he signs it. A son calls the man who raised him and says something feels wrong. I paused. You did none of those things. I was scared, he said. Vanessa, she threatened. Everyone in this room has been threatened by something, I said. Fear is not a defense. It is a choice. And you chose to be afraid instead of choosing to be loyal. He broke. His face crumbled like wet concrete, and he reached for me, arms open, fingers grasping. I did not step back, but I did not step forward either. I have something to tell you, I said, and I want you to hear it clearly, because I will only say it once. The sanctuary held its breath. Mitchell Construction, Mitchell Properties, Mitchell Development Group, and every account, asset, and investment tied to my name, $35 million in total, will be donated in full to the National Registry for the Wrongfully Convicted, a foundation I am establishing today. Every dollar, every brick, every contract. A gasp rippled through the pews, like wind through tall grass. Darnell's mouth opened, but no sound came out. The house on Walnut Grove will be sold. The office on Union Avenue will be liquidated. The fleet vehicles, the equipment yard, the rental properties on Lamar, all of it, gone. I reached into my breast pocket and pulled out a single envelope. White, sealed. I held it out to Darnell. This is a cashier's check for $25,000. It is everything you will receive from me. It is enough to start over if you are smart, and not enough to be comfortable if you are lazy. He stared at the envelope like it was radioactive. Take it, I said. His hand trembled as he reached for it. His fingers closed around the paper, and he pressed it against his chest, as if it were the last thing on earth that belonged to him. You have a choice now, I said. The same choice I had 40 years ago when I walked out of a prison cell with nothing but a bus ticket and a name nobody trusted. You can build something honest. You can earn what you eat. You can become the man I thought you were. I put my hand on his shoulder. He flinched. Or you can follow your mother's road. You can chase shortcuts, beg for inheritance, and blame the world for what you refuse to build. I squeezed once. That choice is yours. I will not be here to watch you make it. Darnell clutched the envelope with both hands and said nothing. Tears ran down his face in 2 straight lines, silent as rain on glass. I turned away from him. I faced the congregation one final time. 800 faces. Some angry, some crying, some recording on their phones. All of them watching. I spent 5 years in a cage for a crime I did not commit, I said into the microphone. I spent 40 years building something real. And today I am giving it all away because money means nothing if the people around you are poisoned by greed. I set the microphone on the podium. I straightened my tie. I buttoned my jacket. And I walked toward the door. Harold confronted Darnell before 800 congregants and 63,000 online viewers. He acknowledged Darnell's ignorance of the conspiracy, but condemned his cowardice for signing guardianship papers without resistance. Harold announced the full donation of his $35M empire to the National Registry for the Wrongfully Convicted, handed Darnell a $25K cashier's check as his only inheritance, and delivered a moral ultimatum. Build something honest, or follow your mother's road. Harold then turned and walked toward the church exit. The double doors of Greater Faith Baptist Church weighed 400 pounds each. Solid oak. Brass handles. I had paid for them 12 years ago, when the old ones rotted off their hinges. Franklin never thanked me. He said it was God's provision. I pushed them open with both hands, and the Memphis sun hit my face like a baptism I had been waiting 40 years to receive. The parking lot was chaos. 3 FBI vehicles sat with their lights spinning in lazy blue circles. A local news van had already arrived. Its satellite dish extended toward the sky like a metal flower reaching for the sun. 2 officers stood near the curb with Franklin in the back seat of an unmarked sedan, his white robe pressed against the tinted window like a surrender flag. I did not look at him. To my left, Lorraine sat in the second vehicle. Her white hat was gone. Her pearl necklace had been removed and placed in an evidence bag on the dashboard. She stared straight ahead with the expression of a woman who had run out of lies and had nothing left beneath them. I did not look at her either. Diane Kessler stood near the third vehicle, her briefcase in one hand and her phone in the other. She saw me and walked over, heels clicking on the asphalt with the precision of a metronome. "It's done," she said. "All 3 are in federal custody. Arraignment will be Monday morning. Franklin is looking at 15 to 20 on the conspiracy and obstruction charges alone. Lorraine faces attempted murder. Vanessa gets accessory and assault on a federal officer." I nodded. "The foundation paperwork," I said. "Is it filed?" Diane opened her briefcase and produced a single document. Crema-colored paper, heavy stock, embossed seal at the top. The Mitchell Freedom Foundation. Established this date. Sole beneficiary of all assets held under Harold James Mitchell, including but not limited to Mitchell Construction LLC, Mitchell Properties Incorporated, Mitchell Development Group, and all associated accounts, vehicles, equipment, and real estate holdings. Total estimated value, $35,200,000. I signed it on the hood of her Mercedes. The pen felt heavier than any contract I had ever held in 40 years of business. Not because I was afraid, because I was free. "The accounts," I said. "Show me." Diane pulled up her phone and turned the screen toward me. Chase Bank. Account ending in 4,471. Balance, $0.00. Wells Fargo. Account ending in 8,823. Balance, 0. First Tennessee. Account ending in 0196. Balance, 0. 3 accounts, 3 zeros. 40 years of concrete, steel, sweat, and early mornings reduced to a number that children learn before they can write their own name. I smiled. It was not a sad smile. It was not bitter. It was the smile of a man who had carried a boulder up a mountain for 4 decades and finally set it down at the summit, not because he was tired, but because the view was better without it. "One more thing," I said. I reached into my jacket and pulled out a second envelope. Inside was a personal check. Not a cashier's check. My own handwriting, $25,000, made out to Patricia Elaine Flowers. "Make sure my nurse gets this," I said. "She saved my life and never asked for anything in return." Diane took the envelope and tucked it into her briefcase without a word. She knew better than to argue with me about money I no longer had. "Where will you go?" she asked. I looked past her, past the police vehicles and the news van, and the cluster of congregants now spilling out of the church doors with their phones raised, past the steeple I had funded, past the parking lot I had paved, past every brick and beam that bore my name but never held my heart. "I have a storage unit on Summer Avenue," I said. "There is something in it I have been saving for a day like this." Diane raised an eyebrow, but did not ask. I shook her hand. Firm. Final. The handshake of a client who no longer needed a lawyer because he no longer had anything left to protect. "Thank you, Diane. For everything. You earned this, Harold. Every bit of it." I turned and walked across the parking lot. Behind me I could hear voices rising. Someone was calling my name, a reporter probably, or a deacon, Or one of the hundreds of people who suddenly wanted to know the man they had ignored for 40 years while he wrote checks in silence. I did not turn around. My truck sat in the far corner of the lot. A 2019 Ford F1, 150, black, with 200,000 miles and a scratch on the rear bumper from a job site in Germantown. I had bought it used. I would sell it tomorrow. But today, it had one more job to do. I climbed in, turned the key, and pulled out of the parking lot of Greater Faith Baptist Church for the last time. The rearview mirror showed the steeple growing smaller. The cross on top caught the afternoon sun and threw a shadow across the road, like a long finger pointing nowhere. I drove south on Elvis Presley Boulevard, past the motels and the barbecue joints and the pawn shops with their neon signs buzzing in the afternoon heat. Memphis unfolded around me the way it always had, loud, alive, indifferent to the dramas of men who thought their money made them important. The storage unit was 15 minutes away. Inside it, under a canvas cover that had not been removed in 6 years, sat the only thing I had ever owned that I bought purely for joy. I had promised myself I would only drive it on the day I was truly free. Today was that day. Harold exited the church, witnessed FBI loading Franklin, Lorraine, and Vanessa into custody vehicles. He signed the foundation paperwork donating his entire $35M empire to the National Registry for the wrongfully convicted, confirmed all 3 bank accounts at zero balance, left a $25K check for Nurse Patricia, and drove his old Ford F-150 toward a storage unit on Summer Avenue where something waited under a canvas cover, something he promised himself he would only use on the day he was truly free. The storage unit was number 417, third row from the back, tucked between a unit full of old church furniture and one that smelled like motor oil and forgotten ambitions. I had rented it 6 years ago, paid annually in cash, and never told a single soul it existed. Not Lorraine, not Darnell, not even Marcus Webb. I rolled up the metal door, and the afternoon light poured in like liquid gold across the concrete floor. There she sat, a 1968 Shelby GT 500, midnight blue, with 2 white racing stripes running from hood to trunk like the spine of something wild and untamed. 455 horsepower under a hood that had been restored by a man in Collierville who charged me $18,000 and told me I was crazy for keeping her locked in a box. I pulled the canvas cover off slowly, the way you unwrap something sacred. Dust floated in the sunlight like confetti at a parade no one else was invited to. The chrome bumpers caught the light and threw it back at me in sharp silver lines. The leather interior was black as midnight, cracked in 2 places on the passenger seat, and it smelled like history. I had bought her in 2020 from an estate sale in Germantown. A retired dentist had owned her for 30 years and driven her less than 4,000 miles. When I sat behind the wheel for the first time, I felt something I had not felt since the day I walked out of prison. Possibility. The raw, unfiltered belief that the road ahead was longer than the road behind. But I made a promise to myself that day. I told myself I would not drive this car until I was free. Not free the way the world defines it, out of a cell, off parole, debts paid, taxes filed. Free the way a man defines it when he has looked evil in the face and refused to become it. Today I was free. I opened the driver's door. The hinge groaned once, low and deep, like an old friend clearing his throat before saying welcome back. I slid into the seat and rested my hands on the steering wheel. The leather was cool under my palms. The gauges sat at 0, waiting. I turned the key. The engine exploded to life with a sound that rattled the metal walls of the storage unit and sent pigeons scattering from the roof like prayers released into the sky. 455 horses, screaming through dual exhausts, vibrating through the floorboard and up through my spine like electricity finding ground. I sat there for a full minute, just listening, just breathing. Then I pulled out of the unit, rolled down Summer Avenue with the windows open, and pointed the hood south toward Highway 61. The Mississippi Delta stretched out before me in endless green and brown, flat as a promise and wide as forgiveness. Cotton fields on both sides, telephone poles ticking past like seconds on a clock that no longer mattered. The speedometer climbed to 70, then 80. The wind came through the open window and tore at my collar, and I let it. I had no destination. For the first time in 40 years, I did not need one. There was no meeting at 7. No contract to review by 9. No wife to come home to. No son to call. No bishop to fund. No empire to maintain. There was only the road, the engine, and the man behind the wheel. I thought about Darnell as the miles stacked behind me. I thought about the envelope in his hands and the look on his face when he realized $25,000 was all that separated him from the truth about himself. I hoped he would build something. I believed he might. But I would not be there to watch, and I would not be there to catch him if he fell. That was not cruelty. That was respect. The same respect the world gave me when it handed me a bus ticket outside a prison gate and said, "Figure it out." I thought about Lorraine. Not with anger. Not anymore. Anger requires investment, and I had divested completely. I thought about her the way you think about a storm that has passed, acknowledging its power, respecting its damage, and moving forward into clearer sky. I thought about Franklin, a man who spent 40 years building a kingdom on the bones of a lie. Every sermon he preached, every hand he shook, every prayer he offered was constructed on the foundation of a stolen life. Mine. And now that foundation was gone, and everything he built would collapse under the weight of its own emptiness. I did not feel satisfaction. I felt something quieter. Something that lived in the space between justice and mercy, where a man can acknowledge that he did what was necessary without pretending he enjoyed it. The sun dropped low over the delta, painting the sky in shades of copper and violet. The Shelby's headlights cut 2 clean lines through the gathering dusk. The radio was off. I did not need music. The engine was enough. The wind was enough. The silence inside my own chest was enough. I was 69 years old. I had $35 million less than I had this morning. I had no wife, no son, no home, no company, and no congregation. And I had never been richer in my life. The highway stretched ahead, dark and endless and mine. I pressed the accelerator, and I did not look back. If this story moved you, leave a comment below and tell me, what would you have done in Harold's place? Would you have given Darnell a second chance, or would you have walked away with nothing? Subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss a story. Share this with someone who needs to hear it today.